So you saw the amazing trailers or commercials of Honkai Star Rail and decided to take the path of the Trailblaze. What characters do you invest in? The characters best in the endgame are not the easiest to build or to use. You don't have access to the same resources till raising your Trailblaze level and Equilibrium level. Here are some characters to start off with. First, let's talk supports. These have the largest effect on damage done and taken. First, we have the buffers. Characters that will provide buffs to your teammates to increase damage or speed very early into the game. You get Asta for free. And though she may seem very unassuming, she is a very strong character that will be useful into the end game. She's a character based around using her skill to get passive charging stacks that increase the attack of your teammates, and an ultimate that increases the speed of your allies. Speed is one of the hardest stats to get control of in the early game, and Asta will help cure that problem. So if you manage to get a copy of Ting Yun, she will treat you very well. She acts like a battery for your main DPS, increasing their damage, and gives them a huge amount of energy to get their ultimate back up faster. Though this character is a little bit harder to get since she is not on the standard banner. We'll talk about banners in another video. If you're able to get Bronya off the standard banner, your account will now be twice as good. Her skill makes your chosen character go next with increased crit damage. The next character I want to talk about that is a support but a debuffer. With Pela's ultimate, she's able to bring down the defense of the enemy, and with her skill be able to remove a buff off the enemy. Check to make sure it is removable off the enemy. Also, if she starts battle with her technique, the enemy will immediately start with their defense drop. Well is also a debuffer off the standard banner. He revolves around making the enemy so slow they barely move at all. His technique and skill will apply slow to the enemy, the ultimate having a very high chance to imprison the enemy. For sustain, as a free-to-play player, you will be a bit more limited. You start off with March 7th, who is a shielding character and prevents your allies from taking damage and freezing the enemy. She also has the ability to remove a debuff off an ally, making her very strong for you in the early game. You also receive Natasha for free. Being one of the queens of commercials for Honkai Star Rail in the early days, she is your bread and butter healer. Her skill heals and cleanses an ally. Her ultimate heals the whole team, and her talent makes her healing do more. She's relatively boring to play, but will help your team stay alive. If you find yourself with a Lynx, you're a happy Trailblazer. She's a lot like Natasha in the way that she heals, but her cleanse is on her ultimate, and the character she heals has higher taunt value, meaning they're more likely to be attacked. In terms of limited 5 stars, we have Gepard, who when his ultimate is up is unbreakable and will self-res one time. You don't have to invest much in this character, so if you have him and you're having a hard time getting through something, throw him on your team, let him put his shield up. He doesn't need to be fast or anything. If you pulled on the Acheron banner, you likely got a Gallagher. I think Gallagher is one of the best 4-star unit for sustain, even though he's not the highest healing per turn character. He focuses more on reducing the damage that the enemy is putting out and allowing your teammates to heal themselves. So he may be a little bit more difficult to use, but I think the payoff is very good. The main 5-star sustain on the standard banner is Bailu. For the most part, she just puts out small heals that you cannot control which target they hit, but she also has a res one time in battle for a teammate. This character is decent, but if you've already put resources into Gallagher or Lynx, I would continue to invest into those two characters. For the last part of sustain, we'll talk about Fire MC or the Fire Preservation main character. This character has a taunt in their skill and will shield their allies and focuses then on returning damage. So putting investment into the Fire MC will actually help you get done with things quicker, where someone like Gepard will take a longer amount of time for you to kill them. You also can get free Eidolons, which we can go over in another video, which are small power-ups for the character. It makes them better at their job. So now let's move on to the star of the show, damage dealers. The reason why I'm making this video is that damage dealers vary the most based on investment, and that is because of the way they use stats. Someone like Susong here loves crit chance, crit damage, and speed. These are the hardest things to gather together to make a character strong. So the reason why I'm making this video is because of this character, Dr. Ratio.
Building Dr. Ratio is a complete scam.
This character loves crit damage and crit chance. Both stats are relatively hard to get, and not to mention Dr. Ratio relies on team compositions as well. So building Dr. Ratio, even though he's free, will not yield the best results until late in the game, when you're able to accumulate those stats based on your relics and on your teammates. Examples of these crit damage based characters that you'll likely find under 4-star characters: Su Shang, Dan Heng, who you get very early in the game, and Qingchui. Of these 4-star crit damage based characters, I would recommend building Sushang, as many characters do have physical weakness, though Qingchui does well with many copies or eidolons. We'll go over elements and archetypes in another video. She also has a very fun playstyle. On the standard banner, we do have characters like Yangqing, who suffers from getting hit and severely loses damage, so rougher character. A lot of people will find good damage from Hook, another one rivaling that of Himiko, main 5-star. You'll probably tired of using this damage route, so for fire damage, likely move Hook is your little sis character, even though you do get free eidolons. Clara does rely on crit rate and crit damage, but she has such high survivability, she'll probably make things easy to clear for you, so maybe not a bad idea to invest into. Himiko's reliant on the same stats, but has a fun kit, so if you want to put some investment into her, you can. Though you will not see payoffs for a long time. Also, she is beautiful. Now we're going to move on to a different archetype of damage dealer that I think is way easier for beginner accounts and free-to-play people to build. And that is dot damage characters, or damage over time. These characters are way more reliant on attack, which is easier to get in the game, and aren't too reliant on speed. Here we have Sampo, who is a great wind damage character who breaks the shields of enemies very quick between his skill and ultimate. If you're able to pick up a Gwynion, she is great. She also increases the damage of your teammates through Fire Kiss. Also, dot characters enjoy break effect, which you will pick up for free on a lot of gear. Luca is able to purge a buff off an enemy while doing a lot of break effect damage. Serval is kind of a hybrid where she does some dot damage and also likes crit rate and crit damage. Therefore, I find her very easy to build. You will find usefulness from her for a very long time, so worth putting some points into. By no means should you ever build Arlon. He is difficult to use and does barely any damage. He does the most damage when he's low on health with 0 survivability for not that much payoff. So here's an example of a team I might recommend to a new beginner player. Here we have a decent spread of damage types, a lot of dot damage in here, and Asta for speed and attack bonus to the dot character. Plus the fire main character, as she is required for some missions early on in the game. She'll be more than enough to keep your team alive, and you could just eat some consumables in between the heal. And if you're able to get some of the standard banner 5-star characters, you can have some combination of Bailu or Gepard. Bronya on the team, if you have her, she is amazing. Some form of support buffer or Pela in this situation. And then your main carry DPS here. If you're able to get well early on, there's a lot of enemies that are tough that are weak to imaginary damage. Or you can use Sushang. I used Sushang for most of the story, especially in the first 2 worlds, and she did more than enough damage. So to recap quickly, the supports you want to focus on are Bronya, Asta, and Tingyun. Yukong's difficult to use. For debuffing, we have Pela and Welt, who are very strong. For sustain, I'd recommend using the Fire MC when you unlock it, or Gepard. And for healing, it's more user's choice, but I would recommend Lynx, Gallagher, or Bailu. DPS is more complex, but for the most part, stay away from Arlon and a lot of heavy crit damage characters. And in terms of dot, almost any of the dot damage characters will be great for your account and are great at breaking shields, making it to where you take less damage and deal more damage. To recap, crit rate, crit damage characters are difficult to build, high investment, high speed investment as well, most of the time. So a character like Dr. Ratio will be very difficult to build. In the comments, if you want to talk about 5 stars you find actually fairly easy to build, whether they're standard or limited banners, write it down in the comments below. Also remember, supports are king. Thank you so much, and I'll put out some other videos on how to navigate the UI, relic and light cone systems, and various other things to help beginning players in the game. Thank you so much, and hit the subscribe button.